Good morning and welcome. My name is T.Q. Bui. I am the Special Emphasis Program Manager and the Federal Women's Program Manager at Johnson Space Center. One of the many rewarding functions I get to do is the opportunity to collaborate with the Office of Education, the Community Relations Office, the Information Resources Directorate, and all the amazing and talented individuals around JSC to plan for today's event. March is Women's History Month. It is an opportunity to honor and celebrate historic achievements of women. American women have contributed and shaped all aspects of American culture. Each year, National Women's History Month selects a unifying theme and recognizes national honorees whose work and lives testify for that theme. For 2013, the theme is Women Inspiring Innovation Through Imagination, celebrating women in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The National Women's History Project has announced the names of 18 honorees for the 2013 Women's History Month. These 18 honorees selected are all extraordinary visionaries and role models in the STEM fields. They represent a remarkable range of accomplishments and a wide diversity specialties, including medicine, robotics, computer programming, analytical chemistry, architecture, and primatology. These women's lives and work span centuries of American history. They come from different cultural and ethnic backgrounds. 6 of the 115 nominees for 2013 are part of the NASA family. Mary Cleave, Bonnie Dunbar, Wally Funk, one of the original Mercury 13 women astronauts, Ellen Ochoa, our Johnson Space Center director, Sally Ride, and Judith Resnick. NASA is one of the largest federal employers of women in STEM fields. One of our top priorities in educational outreach is to encourage students to follow STEM career paths. Women in STEM High School Aerospace Scholars, or WISH, is part of the White House Council on Women and Girls Initiatives. WISH program encourages young women from across our nation to pursue STEM degrees and ultimately STEM careers. In 2012, 135 high school juniors were selected to participate on an online curriculum covering space exploration. Through a competitive process, 84 young women were invited to JSC to work with engineers and scientists on human exploration mission for 2 weeks during the summer. We are working to inspire these future explorers to study those crucial STEM disciplines. The achievements that follow will benefit not only NASA, but our entire nation. Our next speaker is truly a role model for these future explorers. Dr. Janet Kavandi graduated from Carthage Senior High School, Carthage, Missouri, in 1977, received a Bachelor of Science degree in chemistry from Missouri Southern State College, Joplin in 1980, Master of Science degree in chemistry from the University of Missouri-Rolla in 1982, Doctorate of Analytical Chemistry from the University of Washington, Seattle in 1990. A 3-flight veteran, Dr. Kavandi has logged more than 33 days in space, traveling more than 13.1 million miles in 535 Earth orbits. Prior to astronaut career, Dr. Kavandi was a defense and space power engineer. Her work on pressure indicating paints for her doctoral dissertation resulted in 2 patents. Dr. Kavandi currently serves as the director of the Flight Crew Operations Directorate at Johnson Space Center. She is responsible for directing the day-to-day activities of the Directorate, including the Astronaut Corps and the Aircraft Operations at Ellington Field. Please welcome Dr. Janet Kavandi, an astronaut, an engineer, a leader, a mentor, a mother, a role model, who will give the welcome remarks.
Thank you, TQ. Well, good morning, everyone. We're glad to have you all here today. It's exciting to come and welcome people to an event like this. People said, maybe you should talk about how you got from Carthagemo to LEO. And I'm like, well, I guess I could talk a little bit about that. If you had seen where I grew up, where I was born, I don't think one would have predicted that little kid from a town of 1,100 people in Missouri would have ever stood up here today to talk about how women should be help each other achieve great things in STEM. And I'm trying to think, what was it that inspired me way back then in that little town? I didn't really have a lot of female role models in that little small town. The only female professional that I could remember was our doctor, our family physician. I remember being very impressed by her and thinking that was a really awesome thing that she did. I had some really, really wonderful teachers in school. I had an amazing chemistry teacher in high school, a female teacher who I really admired and probably inspired me to go into chemistry in college. I had a really wonderful math teacher, a male math teacher, but he was a calculus teacher, but he was so respectful to all of his students, male and female, and treated everyone exactly the same, which wasn't the case in every class, but I remember being very impressed with him as well, and that his fairness that he showed very openly to everyone in his class. Never really thought about being the only female in a lot of the classes that we ended up in. It just seemed normal and natural. So what was it that really inspired me? I have to think it was my family. Or actually, my father in particular, growing up, he was the one who would always, you can do anything you want, you can be anything you want. But he also practiced what he spoke about. He, instead of dolls and things like that, he would give me a doctor's kit for Christmas, And I thought, well, that's really cool. None of my friends had a doctor's kit, and I thought it was really awesome that I had a doctor's kit and no one else did. And I would practice giving injections with the little fake syringes and giving people medicine, and ended up not being a doctor. But I think the point was that it taught me to think in a different way. There wasn't just one type of thing to be interested in or a toy to play with. And then other things that I think he did is he took a lot of interest in taking us out and showing us things that made us think in bigger ways, maybe than most parents do with kids sometimes. We would, even in our leisure time, go out on the back porch at night in Missouri. You have a great view of the stars, right? There's lots of stars out there, and we would talk about, wow, that's a lot of stars. I wonder how many there are. I wonder how far away they are. I wonder what it would look like if we were like on the moon and you could look back at the Earth. What would we look like? Could you see us? What would the planet look like? And no one had been to the moon yet, and I think that started me thinking, like, that would be, what an awesome thing to do, would be to go out in space and look back at our planet, and just what would life look like that way? And even in, the very early stages of education, math and science, he would really put a lot of praise on his daughters when we did well in our math and science classes. And that was really a big deal to me for him to be proud. So I think one of the greatest things, it's wonderful what we do here, and we mentor people, but I think some of our greatest contributions, even as employees here, are to inspire our own children, at home, or our nieces and our nephews, boys and girls, because we need to make sure that we treat them equally. We need to make sure we're telling our daughters the same things we're telling our sons, and that our sons know we're telling our daughters the same thing. I think it's a cultural change. It's much better than whenever I started working, and I think it will continue to get better and better. But we have an obligation to our own kids and our own families to be great role models at home as well. So far, so good at my house. We got I've got one in engineering. I've got one in biomedical. I'm hoping. One's a freshman, one's a fourth year student at A&M. So we'll see how that goes. That's kind of my own experience. So let's see. Today on the agenda, for the main reason we're here, the View Inside JSC Educate to Innovate Women in STEM panel discussion. This panel is comprised of 6 dedicated employees who play a vital role at JSC in making positive contributions toward promoting women to choose STEM education and career fields. They will discuss their accomplishments and offer encouragement to women and girls considering technical careers to become the trailblazers of tomorrow. Please join me in welcoming our panelists to the stage. And I'll read them off one at a time, and they can start walking up. Dr. Regina Blue, Irene Chan, Sabrina Gilmore, Dr. Cam Lula, Heather Paul, and Alma Stephanie Tapia. Janelle Holt will serve as our moderator. So please welcome these folks and be ready with your questions at the end of this panel. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kavandi, and good morning. I'm honored and privileged to serve as today's moderator, and I'm looking forward to a phenomenal panel. Before we begin, I'd like to share with you a few announcements that are going to help us maximize our time together. First, I'd like to welcome those who are joining us virtually. We have Ustream, we have NASA Johnson Space Center TV, we have NASA Internet TV, and we also have a live broadcast across the agency. For anyone who's participating, feel free to send your comments and your questions via Twitter at the following address. And those who are here in the auditorium, you can see it on the right-hand side of the screen. And the address is www.twitter.com/NASA_Johnson. Today's panel will be taped for playback at a later date. So if you'd like information about being able to see the panel in the playback, please contact the Office of Equal Opportunity and Diversity at Johnson Space Center. The number is 281-483-0607, and we'll show some information towards the end of the panel also so that you'll be able to capture that information. And last but not least, please hold your questions. We're going to have an opportunity for questions and answers at the end of the panel. So during the question and answer period, if you'd like to ask any of the panelists a question, those who are in the auditorium, you'll notice that there's 2 stationary microphones on both sides of the auditorium towards the front of the stage. Please walk towards those microphones, and that's where you'll be able to ask your questions. We do ask that you wait until you have the microphone before you ask your question so that we can capture your question and it's audible when we have the playback of this particular panel. So without further delay, let's hear from our panel. Panelists, the first thing we'd like you to do is please briefly introduce yourselves, starting with your name, your title, and where you work.
Okay, good morning. My name is Regina Blue. I am the ISS Integration Manager for External Relations, and I report to Mike Kincaid here, who is the External Relations Director.
Good morning. My name is Irene Chan. It is my distinct pleasure to be amongst these lovely ladies and wonderful gentlemen. I am the newbie in the group. I'm starting my career barely. I am in the ISS program office doing web development, and I'm sitting here today also as the local section president of the Society of Women Engineers, the Texas Space Center section. And also, I just recently got my master's from the Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University with my master's in aeronautical science.
Good morning. My name is Cam Lula. First of all, I'm very delighted to be here on this panel representing entire male population. Not only of Johnson Space Center, maybe of the planet, but nonetheless, my name is Cam Lula. I am Director for University Research and Collaborations Office in External Relations. Regina and I work in the same office. Before coming to this office for many years, almost 20 years, I served as the Chief Scientist for Earth Observations and Science Payloads for Spatial Program and partly for International Space Station Program. So I'm delighted to be here, and I'm interested in giving my perspective in this wonderful panel. Thank you.
Well, good morning. My name is Heather Paul, and I'm a mechanical engineer in the Crew and Thermal Systems Division. And just recently, last year, I was asked to step out of my technical duties and start working as our strategic communications lead, ensuring that the fantastic work that our engineers do in my division and then across Johnson Space Center is being well communicated out to students, educators, and the general public. And it's such a pleasure as an engineer to help get this motivation forward to encourage not only females, but students of all ages to continue to have an interest in science, technology, engineering, and math.
My name is Alma Estefani Tapia, and it's a privilege to be on this panel with all these wonderful women and our male perspective, Cam. I'm a materials engineer, and I work in the structural engineering division, and I've have the privilege of supporting all the different programs, and in particular, extracurricular activity for ISS.
My name is Sabrina Gilmore. I have a background in mechanical and biomedical engineering, and I spent most of my NASA career to date in mission operations in the EVA group, which I've always considered to be the coolest work that we do here. And then recently I decided to exercise a different part of my brain, and I'm now working in the station program office in the external integration world. So now I get to work with all of our different international partners and reach agreements and consensus on keeping station up and running with respect to utilization. So I'm enjoying using both parts of my brain now.
Thank you, panelists. Now it's time for us to begin our questions. And my first question is for you, Regina. Women are capable and competent, yet they remain underrepresented in STEM fields. Why is that?
Good morning. I think that question is a great question, and it's one that comes up quite often, if not all the time, when we're talking about women and we're talking about the STEM careers. And certainly, let me caveat my answer before I even give it. There are many specific individual reasons that each of you probably have or know people that have specific reasons based on their own experiences. But I believe that there are two fundamental reasons that drive the underrepresentation of women in STEM. One of them being is how we as a country historically view STEM careers. We all grew up, right, wrong, or indifferently, in a culture where a scientist or a pilot or an engineer or anyone that had anything to do with mechanics was represented by a male. And that started very on. I know in my personal experience, as young as I am or think I am, when I got to college and decided I was a pre-med major and a mathematics major, and I can remember my advisor looking at me and asking, "You really want to do this?" And I said, "Well, yeah." And he said to me, "If you pull it off, you'll be able to write your ticket." And this was in the late 80s when I got to college. So we historically have viewed STEM careers as being male-dominated, and that permeates itself in our institutions of higher learning, right, wrong, or indifferently. My experience is probably not a new one or not a unique one in that women, particularly minority women, are at a minimum, raise eyebrows when they pursue these careers. So that's the one fundamental thing. The other thing is that we meaning women, are mech'd, or we have it in our DNA to be nurturers. And we grow up being groomed that we should take care of our family. We should be the one to provide the social context for our families. And so the STEM careers are often challenging and they're time consuming, and women, right, wrong, or indifferently, sometimes do make a choice to not be in the STEM career based on the priority of family. So those two factors are underlying factors coupled with individual things that may attribute to women being underrepresented in STEM.
Thank you for sharing. Other panelists, do you have anything you'd like to add? Yeah, I think that that's really interesting, because even talking to some of my elders, one of the things that I always hear is with certain generations, there were things that you were primed, if you will, to pursue. For example, a lot of women were encouraged, especially with my mother's generation, to be either a teacher or a nurse. My mom's a nurse. So, I mean, that's still STEM, but I can really personally relate to some of the things that you're sharing. My next question is for Irene. And this year's theme for 2013 Women's History Month is Women Inspiring Education Through Imagination, Celebrating Women in Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. So I have a two-part question for you in regards to keeping that theme in mind. You're the president of the Texas Space Center section of the Society of Women Engineers, also known as SWE. Okay. So what do you feel the role is of JSC along with SWE and other nonprofit organizations in encouraging innovation through education for women in STEM fields?
All right, part one of the two-part question. All these organizations, JSC, SWE, AIAA, and all the other professional organizations I am involved with, I feel the biggest role in encouraging women to pursue STEM careers is to be an active ally and a resource. Usually this, in people's mind, go, oh, that means a financial contribution. I don't have that. But really, it's an investment of time. These young ladies want you to be there for them, be an ally for them as they pursue some STEM-related endeavor. For example, when I was pursuing my master's capstone project, two lovely folks in DI here let me be a fly on their wall as they trained flight controllers in space flight resource management. I could not have finished my capstone project without their support saying, oh, we don't need to go through all that red tape, just come observe. You're not interrupting our class, you're just making your observation and learning how space flight resource management is done. With SWE, the members actively participate in conferences geared towards young ladies in elementary and middle school called Expanding Your Horizons or the Sally Ride Science Festival. They even go into Girl Scout activities and help them earn some merit badges. SWE members don't provide money, they provide their time. They share their enthusiasm, and enthusiasm is very courageous. So you don't have to be a female. If you're a male in a technical field, just spend some time with a young lady and say, hey, look at this groovy technical stuff I'm working at. You could do it too. Let's go part two.
All right, part two. How has your participation in professional organizations helped develop your STEM career?
Being active in a professional organization really has helped my career take off. It has helped me feel more confident in my pursuit of a STEM career. You see an East LA gal, you don't think, oh, she wants to do anything in STEM. I thought it was already a victory that I've come out of East LA and I have a career. I have a college degree. That's not too many folks in East LA could say. Again, I'm going back to my point that there are allies and resources in these organizations. With SWE, I have found mentors through a formal mentoring program called MentorNet. It's an online mentoring program where I would write an email back and forth with someone in industry, and they would tell me, hey, cheer up, this is what I've gone through too. Don't lose hope, keep on trucking. And also, there are opportunities to get experience in lieu of an internship. I was able to participate in competitions sponsored through these professional organizations, and at the same time give back to my community by mentoring other gals and being judges at science fairs and other technical projects.
Thank you. Would the panel like to add any comments?
I might add a comment. Working with professional organizations is very, very important because even in professional organizations, I've been involved with AIAA, AAA, American Association for Advancement of Science. For the last 10, 15 years, we have seen emergence of women leadership in these organizations. And as we use professional organizations as additional resource to bring attention to STEM-related fields to women, especially underrepresented groups, I think they play a very important and vital role, and I think people like her in investing her time is a very worthwhile cause.
Thank you. I think another benefit that professional organizations add for STEM is that exposure for a person who is not pursuing those particular fields because the possibility has never been introduced to them. So I really think for that reason it's an awesome opportunity to reach out to to students and get them engaged. Next question is for Heather. And this question is in regards to what has inspired you. So my question is, who or what is it has inspired you to work at NASA and also in the technical field that you chose?
Thank you. That's a great question. And I really have to say that it's been multifaceted as I've grown up. The inspiration has come from a variety of individuals. First and foremost, similar to Janet, my family was a very key inspiration for me. Growing up in a small town on Long Island in New York where it wasn't a wealthy community and really the influence of science and math was very low, especially for females, but the influence of Broadway and musicals and the arts was very high, especially coming from the family background that I did have. So my mother was actually a dance teacher when I was first a baby, and so before I could even walk, she said I was dancing in my crib. And I was listening to musicals every time we'd clean the house on the weekends. It was Broadway musicals and show tunes, and that was really the environment that I grew up in. So when I came home one day and I told my mom and dad that I was going to be an astronaut, they looked at me and said, okay. Well, what are we going to do to make that happen? And I said, well, I think I need to be an engineer. I think I need to really stay in math and science. I love math and science. And once again, they looked at me and said, okay. What do we need to do to make this happen? And really, the key was that they supported me every single step of the way. And I came home with questions on my homework that they couldn't answer, whether it was because of their educational background or it was just an area that wasn't their expertise. But they always continued to push me to try to figure out how to solve the problems on my own and gave me the encouragement to not be dissuaded when I had a challenge that I couldn't understand or a problem or a project at school that I was really having a struggle with. Unlike Janet, I was awful at chemistry. Oh my goodness. Interestingly, some of my jobs here at NASA have involved chemistry. So it's funny how things come around, but really the family support was key. Then I looked at my teachers, and looking at my education, every one of us could probably think back and think, oh, that one teacher was such an inspiration or such a key role model. But when I really look back on who were my true educational role models, it wasn't necessarily the teachers that I liked. And it's kind of funny. I grew up, once again, performing arts was very heavy influenced in my educational career. And in fact, when we moved to Atlanta, I went to a high school for the performing arts. So science and math was not the key technical aspect. It was all about going to dance and practicing my steps for our routines and performances. And my dance teacher was one of the hardest instructors I had ever had. He pushed us. When we didn't get a step right, he would make us do it again and again. Practice, practice, practice. But the key principles that he taught us in the arts moved across every part of my educational aspects to the point when I'd hit a chemistry problem or a physics problem or a calculus problem that I really couldn't do, I would try and approach it from different angles. I would practice when I was getting ready for exams. And so it's very interesting to think about inspiration, and we're here talking about STEM, but educators really have a huge influence over students growing up, and it's not just the STEM educators, it's really all educators. And then really, I think back on the mentors and role models that inspired me, and I realized that a lot of the opportunities that we provide to students to engage with professionals, whether it's through student organizations or partnerships, it's such a fantastic opportunity for us to get out there and show students that this is something that they can absolutely do, and it's something they should consider. So really, the inspiration has come from so many different areas, and I'm so excited that we're doing programs like this today because we really are doing things to continue to inspire students, and that's very important.
Thank you. I have a follow-on question, and that is, what or who inspires you now?
Well, I have to say the people I work with, absolutely, even just today, sitting with the male role model of the world. How many opportunities do you get to do that, right? So, wow, what a pleasure. No, but truly the people I work with inspire me. Here at NASA, we always are facing challenges, whether it's budget politics or just trying to figure out how to keep people alive in space. And I'm always so amazed at the diversity and the dedication that this community involves. It really is a space community and a space family. So it's very inspirational to work amongst people that are really some of the best and brightest individuals in the world. And then my inspiration also, though, comes from when I get to go out and talk to students and educators in the general public and see what an influence STEM has on the lives of people around this world, how the International Space Station research that we're doing has brought such great benefits to life here on Earth. It's just so inspirational. So whenever there's a day where I'm feeling maybe a little bit down or tired of the NASA paperwork, if I get out and talk to a student or an educator, I realize just how important every single aspect of our job really is, and that is very inspirational.
Thank you for sharing. That's something that, when it comes to thinking about being inspired, I think a lot of folks, when we talk about that and we think about that in relation to STEM, that sometimes we underestimate the impact of being involved in interacting with a person and how that can come back and relate to an individual who might not have had an experience. So thank you for sharing your insight. So on the converse, we've talked about what inspires you. My next question is for Alma Stephanie, and it's related to challenges. And what I'd like to get insight from you about is, from your perspective, what aspects are most challenging about working in the STEM field?
I think for all of us, no matter what type of a STEM field we are, the biggest challenge is really communication. I really think of engineering, I'm an engineer, as that interface between science and society. And when you really learn how to communicate across different lines, I think is when you come to really appreciate the variety and the diversity and the way each individual thinks and the different perspectives that we can all bring to the scientific or technical challenges that we face, especially here at NASA. I think about the fact that we have a lot of different communication lines that we have to cross. And when we do that, we help foster a greater range of ideas. And this variety helps us solve all our mysteries, our engineering mysteries that we have to deal with every day. These communication lines can cross over a little bit of what we're talking about today, the female maybe versus male communication style or perspective that we deal with either interpersonally outside of the workplace or here in the workplace. We also have to understand our company center or even international cultures and be able to really appreciate those different perspectives. And also just learning how to communicate between technical and many times non-technical or management organizations. Ultimately, when we embrace all of the diversity and the different perspectives that they all provide as a collective team, we can make what seems very much impossible out to the public, what we do here at NASA, we make it possible. And that's an amazing feeling to be able to be part of that here at NASA.
Thank you for sharing. And when I think about communication, especially when I'm thinking about young women in STEM, it's a really interesting challenge. So I have a nephew that's 11 years old, and the way he communicates is so different. He texts, and that's how he likes to interact with me. And the things that he's interested in and engaged in are so dynamic. As far as the things that are available, he's totally into social media. He asks questions about Facebook and Twitter. So that's a really interesting thing to think about when you're thinking about communication. Because when we're thinking about how to reach this next generation of STEM students, of course, women as well as men, and young girls as well as young boys, we have to really take that into consideration. So another thing that we've talked about a lot today is mentoring. And so my next question is for you, Sabrina. And my question is, how does mentoring play a role in inspiring young girls to study math and science?
I think one of the reasons I love mentoring programs so much, whether they're formal or informal, is because it's such a dynamic support system. I mean, you're in a really safe environment where you can ask questions and practice something in a very unintimidating environment. And the reason it's so beneficial is because you don't know what you don't know. And so through those conversations in a mentoring relationship, you learn and you fill the gaps in knowledge that otherwise, if you don't have a clue about something, how are you going to know to ask questions and pursue a particular action plan? And we've heard all of the panelists talk about maybe the role that their family has had in this mentoring capacity. And I challenge people, if you're not in a family situation where your mother, father can offer that mentoring role, ask in your community. I mean, people want to help, people want to pay it forward, and for girls who are out there whose parents aren't in STEM, you ask once for help, you ask twice, and if people say no, then ask another 5, 10 people. I mean, there will be someone in your community who will serve as that mentor, who will give you that strength and encouragement and guidance to pursue your dreams. I think for me personally, when I knew I wanted to work at NASA, and it was a very long-term dream. I was not close to achieving it, but through the informal mentors I had in my life, they helped me to articulate an action plan and set the individual goals and milestones to achieving that dream. And I could not be here today without all of the informal and formal mentoring relationships I've had and continue to need. It's not something I just needed in high school or college or in the early parts of my career. It's a lifelong process for every new career opportunity.
I wanted to add to a little bit of what Sabrina said, because I think that I related a lot to some of the comments she made and what Janet made, that we find mentors in unexpected places. Many times we don't appreciate the level of importance that mentorship has in our lives and how we can be a mentor, not only to the next generation of females who might be pursue a STEM field, but to any child or to anybody, even maybe a peer in the workplace, and how we can serve as a mentor to them. I know that in my personal experience, all of my larger role models have all been males, but they were all males who believed in my potential and believed in helping me develop myself. And so I feel that we can all serve as mentorships in our mentors in our community, as long as we look for those opportunities to either mentor others or to find and seek mentorship for ourselves.
And actually, one other point that I should also mention is that mentors make your dreams a reality. Like when I was a student and when I saw people who were, like let's say when I was in high school and it was an opportunity to go, I lived in Atlanta, participate in a program at Georgia Tech, which was our local university, talking to other college students, be it male or female, made it a reality for me to pursue an engineering career because I saw them doing what I eventually wanted to do. And it makes it more tangible, it makes it more of a reality as opposed to something that you just may think about on your own but don't even know how to pursue it.
I'd like to echo that because with mentoring, the thing that I've seen with young students, especially when I work with them, is that as you're talking to them or as you're helping them see those possibilities, sometimes a light bulb comes on that they are learning about things that they would have never thought of otherwise. So they can see, very similar to what Sabrina's saying, they can see the next step and they can see the end result. Because sometimes seeing the end result will help you work through whatever the challenges that you have. So even a portable example, let's say you want to lose a few pounds and you start working out. The workouts can be hard, but if you can see the end result, those pants that you wanted to fit or those few pounds that you wanted to shed, it makes things a lot more easier for you to charge through that challenge. So thank you both for sharing your comments and your insight. Okay, we're moving along in the panel, and our next question, and we're back to the front again for Regina. Back to the beginning of the beginning. Okay, so Regina, why does it matter that women are not pursuing STEM careers? And there's a second question associated with that. Is it wrong that some girls are not interested in STEM?
Okay, I take the second part first. Is it wrong? And if you would ask my nieces, they would say yes. And so I don't think it's an accident, if you will. I am one of 5 siblings. I only have one brother, and he came coupled with a twin sister, and the Lord did that by design. And I have no nephews. And so women in STEM, just women in general, are very important to me, and that's where I have an opportunity to contribute, is to influence. If I would stay in my family, it would be mostly women. And so I would say personally, yes, it's wrong, simply because who I am and what I do. But to answer the more pressing question of why does it matter that women pursue STEM careers, I like this question from a lot of fronts. One, from where we are today at GSC, because we all know that there is a huge advocacy from our center director on inclusion and innovation. And that is something that is near and dear to me as a person and near and dear to me as a professional. And having women in STEM will maximize our innovation, it will maximize our creativity, and it certainly maximizes the competitiveness of our career fields. We have scientists and engineers that are busy solving very important world challenges, be it anything from the ozone layer, if you believe that, be it our EPA challenges, be it our IT infrastructure that is taken over. It's no more the manual processes that generations before us are used to. We have scientists and engineers that are busy solving those problems, and we have those same people that are designing things that we use in our everyday lives, be it from refrigeration to the cars that we drive, to the drapes that we hang in our homes, to the blinds that we hang in our homes. Those things are put together with an engineering design, and without women involved in science and engineering, we have experiences, needs, desires of those women that may be excluded. That's one spill on that. The other piece that I'd like to share, and this may make some people not happy, but it's data and it's real. Women comprise about 52% of the workforce, and so that in of itself will lead you to understand that you're losing about 52% of contribution of the workforce when you exclude women out and out. The other very interesting data point is that women, it has been shown that women score better in the technical fields on tests than men. So you have a body of knowledge, skills, and ability that is omitted when women are underrepresented or women don't pursue STEM fields. And I'd like to lastly share a couple examples of what happens or what could potentially happen when women are admitted. There are two very familiar technological advancements that we use every day, and one being voice recognition and one being airbags. And when voice recognition, that technology was being introduced and deployed, it was tested with the male voice only. And so when they got ready to roll out the male voice, the software did not respond to the female using that recognition because the inclusion of women had been omitted. It was only tested by male vocal cords. And believe it or not, even the woman that has the deepest of voice is different from the highest of a male's range. And so they had to go back and redesign that software and that technology that, quite frankly, I don't really care for. I hate it when I have to sit up and talk to three, I was like, I don't like it, but that's an example of a voice recognition where the women needs were overlooked simply because you didn't have the infusion of women participation in that field. And the other that most of you probably know has to deal with airbags when those were being deployed, and they were designed initially based on the makeup of a male's body. And of course, when they went to test that the first time, thank God it was a dummy, but it literally crushed a female person because that design, again, the women's needs were underrepresented because of the absence of women in STEM. So I hope that those two answers at least have the audience thinking about why it is so important to have women in the STEM careers, not only to address the needs and capabilities of us as a societal entity, but more importantly because there are more women in the workforce and we need that contribution in the STEM fields.
Regina, I thought it was really important that your answer to whether or not it was wrong for some girls to not be interested in STEM, that it was a no. And I actually agree, because when we look at our organization, we live on the taxpayers' support. And we need the entire population, whether or not they choose to pursue fields in STEM, to believe in fields of STEM, and to support the discovery that we do here at NASA, but also across the nation, across the world, that will help us maintain our organization as #1 in the world, but also to maintain our country as #1 in the world.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing both of your insights. And thank you, Regina, for helping really wrap our arms around the concept of why it's important that women do pursue STEM and taking into consideration what that means for us as far as technological advances. So thank you very much for sharing. Our next question is Irene. And Irene, I have another question for you in regards to organizations and participating in community organizations. What is the role of scientific competitions in catalyzing kids, particularly girls and women, to pursue STEM careers? And an example of a scientific competition would be, for example, the FIRST Robotics program.
I love this question. It's near and dear to my heart because I love participating in these competitions as a judge or a mentor. I was never on the other side where I was the kid going, yeah, I'm competing with these robots. Pretty much the role of these competitions is a confidence builder, a scaffold unto, yes, I could handle this challenge. I could handle the next challenge. Yeah, maybe I could pursue a career in this thing. I love doing this. It's instilling the belief that they are comfortable with technical topics, they have a good handle at it, they're developing the skills they need for a STEM career, like gathering requirements, like, oh, for the first competition, they're just designing a robot to meet certain objectives, to knock down blocks or pick up stuff. They are able to program these robots to accomplish these tasks. They're able to communicate with an interdisciplinary team. They come from all walks of life, but yet they're able to come together and find a solution to meet these obstacles. There's so many of these opportunities out there outside of FIRST. They could be mini competitions, making a geodesic dome. How's the best way you can make it? With gumdrops and toothpicks. Wow, anything could be a little challenge that builds their confidence in, hey, I could design a solution. I could attempt to do any of these STEM endeavors.
Thank you for sharing, Irene.
Let me follow up on that, and just like Irene, I've been involved with competitions both as a judge or as a mentor and even a participant. And to follow up on Regina's and earlier discussion, one of the things that competition do is put boys and girls on equal footing. In many cases, I've seen that girls would lead the team, provides them an important concept in their mental makeup that, yes, they can lead a team consisting of boys or boys and girls together. So competitions have advantages at various levels, not only in terms of STEM disciplines, but in leadership skills, in promoting what I would call acceptance of female leadership in scientific and technical areas. So they serve a very, very important purpose. And the competitions organized by professional societies like AIAA, actually, we need to make more concerted effort in bringing more female leadership in those kinds of situations.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Kim. Another thing that I think that it also helps contribute to is promoting that safe environment where students feel okay if they make a mistake or if it's something that they don't know, because other people are going through the same thing that they're going through at the same time. So I really think that that's a great extension also of applying what you've used for your academic studies to things that you can see true applications for. And just from students that I've interacted with and talked to, it makes a really big difference for them. So our next question is for Cam, and this is a question about mentoring. And my question for you is, how does mentoring play a role in keeping women in STEM careers once they've aspired to enter them?
You have heard a lot about mentoring from Sabrina, from Dr. Kavandi. Mentoring is certainly very, very important. And I think mentoring, as was mentioned by Alma here, that it can be found at many different places. It doesn't have to be formal, it could be informal. And I want to share the fact that mentoring starts at home. All change, in my view, starts at home. And I'll share a story here very quickly. In my case, there is inspiration and there is expectation. I grew up in a family with 5 PhDs. And in my family, the STEM or science-related PhDs was my older sister. So she was my mentor. It was a female mentoring me, and she could do it. She had a PhD in biology. And so it was one thing that she inspired me. The second thing that she created was expectation, that if she can do it, I must not just stop at undergraduate or master's degree. Should continue on. So mentoring is very, very important, starts at home. All the change really begins with the family. One of the things that I find fascinating is that parents are our first teachers, our first mentors. They teach us how to read, how to walk. Learning begins at home. So many times the parents are not equipped or informed about STEM fields. So the question becomes how to raise STEM-loving kids in the families. How do we raise STEM-loving kids in the families? Because I was recently with Mike Kincaid, I was talking with Dr. Bonnie Dunbar, who is now at the University of Houston, and she shared a story that at one of her science camps in Seattle Museum of Flight in Washington, a school counselor and a parent was asked, why aren't you sending or telling your girls to go in engineering? And the answer was, well, engineers, we want our girls to work with people. And they had this conception that engineers don't work with people. That kind of education, information, if you will, information flow needs to happen at family level, at parents, so that the beginning of learning and loving STEM fields begins at home. Then that transfers into your school. School teachers need to provide mentoring. Your peers need to be interested in. I see on Regina's desk there is a little thing that says, it's okay to be smart. And then I saw at one of the University of Houston meeting, there was this engineering female student who had a T-shirt that said, geek girls love engineering. So the idea is that we can get mentoring at various different places. I want to share another interesting story, that mentoring does not have to stop after you get your PhD or a master's or doctorate. I want to hold up this cover of Time magazine. Dr. Fiobola Giannotti is a team leader of the team that discovered Higgs boson particle. You saw it in the news last year. What is popularly known as Guard's particle. Now, she was one of the 5. She's number 5. They chose 5 covers. Ultimately, you know that Person of the Year cover went to President Obama, but they chose 5 covers. And she was number 5, a female scientist, physicist, particle physicist. And I was reading her story, and she says the reason she is at this position because of mentoring. First mentoring she got from her dad, who was a geologist in Italy. The second mentoring she got was from a physics professor. When she was taking science courses, the physics professor inspired her to get into this very esoteric field of physics called particle physics. And so one person asked this professor, why are you teaching these young girls particle physics? And this professor replied that I'm cloning physicists. I'm cloning physicists because he saw that these girls have natural tendency to work in physics, and I want to mentor them and grow them into something that then they can use. You'll be surprised to hear the team that discovered this Guard's particle, the leadership of the team, they have hundreds of male scientists and female scientists, but the leadership of team is largely female physicists. So mentoring, to me, is an important lifelong process, as Sabrina mentioned. And the idea really is that it shouldn't and doesn't stop. One other thing I want to point out is that there are a lot of resources and programs available right now. I had the pleasure many years ago to work with Dr. Sally Ride, who has Sally Ride Science Camps. And recently they had, in February last year, they had introduced a Girl to Engineering program. And one of the things they did, and you mentioned about communication, the young generation communicates with Twitters and Facebook and all that. So they had STEM chat for young girls on Twitter. And the idea they had, and I think this is a very important idea, as we all know that you need all kinds of players. The idea they had was not only the young girls were involved, parents were involved, and educators were involved. So they created an ecosystem of STEM education and introduced girls to engineering. So it was part mentoring parents, part mentoring girls, and of course getting educators also working together. So I think from this discussion, mentoring does play an important role and continues to be, I think, a key factor in getting more women in science and engineering fields.
You know, we've talked now 2 different questions about mentoring, and I think that there's a misconception out there that mentoring is this huge commitment that may involve many numerous different hours of time and energy, and really mentoring can come at all different levels. You know, if it's as much as answering a student's questions after a presentation, or talking to your neighbor's child when they have a problem with their math assignment, but it can even go as far as developing the professional mentoring relationships that we have here at Johnson Space Center. So really, when we talk about mentoring, I've encountered this misconception many times. And that's really critical, to offer yourself up as a mentor to your community, to your family, and to your professional peers. And it can be any amount of time. Any influence, any amount of time that you put there could help progress someone to do something that maybe they've never considered that they had the capability of doing. And so it really is very critical on all levels, not only, as Cam mentioned, in the family and at the school, but even beyond that. You don't have to just go get your PhD and you're done, right? Your life continues, and your education really continues, and your opportunities continue. So mentoring is something that really is a key aspect of all of our lives. Mm-hmm.
I think an example of mentoring that really stood out that I heard a few years ago was when Natalie Size told a group of us when she first, when General Howell was the center director of JSC, it was the first exposure she'd had to someone in a military capacity that she was going to be working for, since she did not come from a family background of folks from the military. And in order for her to understand the leadership of the center, she wanted to sit down with him and just, I don't know if it was with him or if it was somebody else in the military, that she just wanted to have a conversation with and ask some questions. And I thought that was so, it was important for me to hear, because here she was at her level explaining a mentoring relationship that she'd had, and in a short-term capacity that Heather was explaining, that it didn't have to be a long-term formal relationship.
Okay. We'll keep moving forward, but thank you so much for the great feedback and insight that you provided with mentoring, because I think a lot of times when people hear the word mentor, they have a preconceived notion of specifically what that is, and you've all given some really great examples of what a mentoring relationship can be. So I'd like to switch gears for just a moment and tackle another issue that we hear about a lot with students. So the first time that you start seeing the drop-offs with young ladies pursuing STEM careers is early in their education. It's said that by the time students reach 4th and 5th grade, girls are already starting to show not as much interest in STEM fields as others. Another pivotal time is when a student is in their graduate education or their undergraduate education. More specifically, their undergraduate education, and that's why sometimes students switch majors, especially if they're in a technical field and it gets difficult. So my question is specifically geared to Heather, and here's the question. What recommendations or advice do you have for young women on how to strategically pursue their technical careers?
It's a great question, and it's one I actually get asked quite a lot when I'm out talking to students. And the first thing that I always say is that they need to open their eyes. And you know, just like mentoring has a misconception about the time commitment, there is such a misconception out there about the STEM fields, and that once you choose your career path to be an engineer or a scientist or a mathematician, that's pretty much it. And really, in truth and reality, I'm a mechanical engineer that has been a scientist, that has been an educator, that has done all different areas and aspects of engineering beyond even what my educational foundation provided. And really, if we all think about our jobs here, they are very multifaceted. There's not one day where any of us can possibly come to work and all you do is that one project that you're working on. Most likely you're communicating with your team, you're trying to figure out the processes and get through your requirements and fly your hardware and make sure it works in space, and really opening the students' minds to the fact that careers in STEM don't mean that all you are is a mechanical engineer or all you are is a scientist. Really, there's a lot of crossover among the science and technology fields. So really opening their eyes. The other thing is that a recent study came out saying that a lot of women students don't choose STEM careers because they just don't realize all of the different opportunities that are available to them. Well, the onus with that is on us to provide opportunities like university programs, AIAA, SWE, these opportunities to influence the students and show them that there are role models in the industry that are engineers and scientists and mathematicians and all of these different careers, to engage them and make them open their minds. The other words of advice I have is that if there's something that you want to do and it's something that you really feel like this is part of what is going to become your future, it's absolutely up to you as a student to make that happen. No one is going to hand it to you, and really the challenges that you face along the way make it even worthwhile at the end. Similar to Regina, when I pursued my engineering degree, the first opportunity I had to have an interview at a university, the dean of engineering asked me when I said, "You want to be an aerospace engineer?" And he said, "Really? You know how few women actually make it in that field?" And I couldn't believe it. This was my first interview with the guy that was telling me, I'm like, "Are you sure you want me to come to your school?" I'm saying I want to study with your programs, and you're telling me I'm most likely not going to make it. Well, the fact of the matter was, at the time, he was, that was based on data. It was true. And I looked at him square in the eyes, and I said, "Well, sir, that's going to change. And I'm here to prove it." And several years later, when I graduated, I had the opportunity to talk to him. And it was very evident, even from just the 4 to 5 years that I was at school, how his perspective had changed on women in engineering. And I was so excited that I was one of the individuals that helped override that skepticism about you're not going to make it. And even as I've become a professional, there have been situations where I've been in where people have told me no, both men and women. And so really the onus is on the student or on yourself to make things happen. You control your future, and everyone makes an informed decision when someone says to you, "You're not going to be able to do that. You can't do that," whether you're a female, a male, or anything. If you take that information in and you put it in your mind as agreement, that is your decision to do. It's up to you to decide whether or not you're going to listen to that person, or, as Sabrina said, ask someone else, because the answer may be different, and you may find some guidance to help you follow your path. So finally, as an engineer, I just have to point out that engineering a career is a critical part. If you're looking at what you want to do in life, like I said, it's not going to be handed to you. You have to figure out how to make it happen. It's the best lesson in project management you can ever have, because it's really up to you to figure out, I'm here, how do I get there? And who can help me along the way? If I don't know, ask around. But not only design your future, but engineer it and then make it happen.
Thank you. If I may put a global perspective on what you just said. Yes. I can relate to the story that when you go to an engineering dean and the dean says, "Well, why are you going in aerospace engineering?" Many years ago, all of us remembered Dr. Kalpana Chawla, who was an astronaut on Columbia. I had a conversation with her many years ago, and this is global. So she told me a story that when she was applying for engineering in Punjab Engineering College in India, the director of the college says to her, same thing: "Why are you wanting to go in aerospace? Why don't you go to civil engineering?" Because, women generally go to civil engineering. And she was very determined, and she said, no, if I can't get in aerospace, I don't want to go to this college. And so then the principal relented and said, "You can go in for first year and see how you're doing. After that, we'll decide." And the rest is history. Not only she got her degree and got her PhD here and became an astronaut. So this is universal, or to some extent global. It's not only limited to U.S. as such. So these cultural barriers are everywhere.
Janelle, I think you brought up a really good point about, at one end, you have to capture the interest of kids in the middle school years, but then how do you retain them in college? And it reminded me of how valuable for me personally the co-oping program was, because it gave me an opportunity to take what I was learning from the classroom outside and see it in practice. And it also gave me a chance to take a break and go back to school refreshed after co-oping. And so students need to know that, yes, pursuing a technical career in STEM is going to be demanding. It is not going to be easy, but if it were easy, then everyone would be doing it. So you got to stick with it, and I highly encourage college students to pursue internship and co-oping opportunities because it will renew your energy. You'll see inspiration in the workforce, and it will help you tackle each physics exam, each calculus exam, each thermo test. So I think that really helps in retaining people in those fields.
I'm not going to belabor this question, but I want to add at least an additional school of thought. And I'm looking down at Susan, who's our JSC director, and at one point in my career, I managed a national lab for her. And it's a question that we've talked about in trying to keep students retained at the 3rd and 4th grade level, and then again at the university level. And I think what we as a nation, as a community, as institutions of higher learning fail to do is to provide the relevance to STEM, to whatever it is that students are pursuing, and we lose that. And I'm sure many of you in the audience have heard students say, well, what does that have to do with what I'm doing today, and how is that applicable? And we need to find ways to put the relevance back into whatever career it is, because I have my doctorate in instructional technology, and I have a sister who's a PhD in psychology, and you can imagine the conversation. She's way over there, right brain, and I'm way over here, and it's just insane, the conversations that we have. And so I'm trying to convince her, at the end of the day, everything reduces to bits and bytes and ones and zeros. And she's like, oh, geez, and she's all over in the gray matter type of thing. But what we, it's amazing. So as we have these conversations, what I've learned to do over the years is try to find the relevance in whatever it is that we're discussing. For instance, you have the young girl who may find math, engineering difficult and wants to pursue, and I'm going to use this example because I hear it a lot, is cosmetology, and I want to go that route. If we would be prudent enough to map what cosmetology is back to chemistry. When you go and you're all enamored with perfumes, well, that touches your skin. You need to understand the reaction of those chemicals on the skin. Well, you might want to do dermatology because you could really produce more different types of perfumes, or if you talk about makeup, well, you're going to have a reaction to makeup or nails or whatever all that is. Those things in the cosmetology world are using chemicals, and it is very much relevant to the chemistry field. And so I think where we could make strides is providing the relevance to whatever field. Music is directly related to mathematics, directly, and I'm a math major, I guess you can tell that, right? But you will be really surprised that a lot of things at the end of the day are interconnected. So I think if we would work really hard at finding the relevance to what young students want to do, they probably would wind up more likely in a STEM career than not.
Thank you. Any more comments from our panelists?
I'm the male member of this panel, so I won't touch cosmetology or makeup, but I want to make a point about Regina's point. One of the things that we have found lately is that STEM educators, and Susan White is here, STEM educators are rethinking how we teach STEM-related disciplines, because each child and each learner has individual learning profile or learning traits. And so if you have seen news recently, Bill Gates was at one of these conferences, and he is a great proponent of something you might have heard on the news called Khan Academy, where you do your math at your own pace, not in a big classroom. So if it takes you 10 minutes to learn this equation, so be it. You can still learn it and master it and apply it, rather than having a situation where everyone must finish this equation in 3 seconds or 30 seconds. So that individualized learning changes in the educational ecosystem will really go a long way in creating more opportunities for students to be involved in STEM disciplines, because once they get engaged and you've given them enough resources and time to keep their interest alive, I think retention will improve in STEM field as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody, for all of the comments and the insight that you've shared. Thinking of the conversation that's happened just a moment ago, one of the things that I thought of while you were talking, one of the things that I just want to share with the whole panel, this is first to you, Heather. I'm glad that you made it. I'm glad that you're here, and I really think just in general with the panel, someone needed to hear the things that you all are sharing as far as your personal stories, as far as your experiences, because it really helps people put things in perspective. It adds the relevance that you're referring to, Regina, and it really helps make this concept very tangible. So it's really greatly appreciated. And when we think about that and we think about students engaging, especially young ladies, engaging into STEM, the other thing that we also talk about, and I'm hearing underlying discussions about it as we talk, is that you're going to come across some challenges throughout your career. So my next question in regards to those challenges, I'm going to direct to Alma Stephanie. And my question is, how do you overcome obstacles as a woman in a STEM field?
Well, I'm going to address that by talking about two key traits that I personally felt have helped me overcome obstacles as a woman in a STEM field. And I think those two qualities are persistence, and I think it has to be confidence. With respects to confidence, it was very important for me to realize that I don't have to fit into any specific mold to achieve what I want in life. It reminds me a little bit of how many of you might have seen the movie Legally Blonde with Reese Witherspoon. It might be a little bit of a movie cliche, but there's some truth behind that movie. You can be yourself, you can be comfortable with being a woman and never having to sacrifice that aspect of who you are, and still be competent and successful in a field that's been traditionally dominated by males. Being true to who you are as an engineer or as a woman allows you to be genuine to your work in the workplace and allows you to really reach your potential. I know that when I was younger, I never dreamt of coming to NASA. I never realized it was even a possibility for me. I not only knew no women who had gone into a STEM field, I knew no one who had gone to college, much less into a STEM-related area. As a child of immigrants who had come from South America, I know that personally, as I went through school, I felt most comfortable in math and science classes because even though I still had a language barrier that I was trying to overcome and learn, I felt competent and I felt confident in STEM fields because that was a language that was universal all across the world. And so as I went through my education, regardless of what culturally my expectations were or what I was surrounded by, I had to have confidence in myself and define my goals by who I was, what my interests were, and not by what I was familiar with or what my peers were interested in or what was expected of me. So going through my education and now also in the workplace, I've had to have the persistence to define those goals and achieve them, and the confidence that I don't ever have to fit into any particular mold of an engineer. I just have to define myself as an engineer. And I think that all women have to define themselves in whatever career choice they choose.
Thank you. Would anyone like to add?
I absolutely agree with you, Alma Stephanie. It was during my undergraduate years, I was really struggling with classes. My career counselors were like, I don't know if aerospace engineering is for you, but it was my core group of female friends that were in my engineering class that held me together and really helped me persevere. They were like-minded folks, and they were leading by example. They were excelling in their studies. Even my time, I just graduated in 2008 from my undergraduate degree. There were only 8 gals out of maybe 30 dudes in an aerospace engineering class, but we all managed to persevere. We studied together, we did everything together. That's what led me to the Society of Women Engineers. I had mentors that were a couple years older than me. They were like, no, just keep on trucking, you're doing well. Yeah, you may falter here and there in some classes, but you have the technical know-how, you'll make it. So it's also going to other conferences, national conferences of SWE, where I met even elder ladies later in their career that's like, oh, I've been there, and we even had less ladies back then in our classes, so you could definitely do it.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, we have the last question for the panel. We're going to get ready to open it up to questions in a moment. So after we have this question and we hear the response from our panelists, then I'll let you know what to do as far as next steps once we get ready to start accepting questions from the audience. So, Sabrina, you have the last question. We started the panel discussion with reasons why women are vastly underrepresented in STEM jobs and amongst STEM degree holders, despite making up nearly half of the U.S. workforce and half of the college-educated workforce. So a STEM workforce is crucial to America's innovative capacity and the global competitiveness. We've talked about that a little bit throughout the panel today. And I think one of the things that we've talked about is how that leaves an untapped opportunity to expand STEM employment throughout the U.S. and even for the world. So my question to you is, if you were queen for the day, what would you do to increase the participation of women in STEM?
I would take STEM out of the classroom for a day. And what I mean by that is get away from the chalkboard, away from calculators and graph paper and equations, and hit the gym classes, hit the music classes, really explain physics and math in ways that kids are already using it in their everyday life. And the reason I found that I had done this education outreach event in India, and we were in a small town. We didn't have computers. I was not going to be talking about slides and, the typical NASA presentation. And, we got some basketballs, we got some soccer balls, and we went outside and explained physics is matter and motion. So we explained acceleration, we explained projectile motion, and the kids really got it, and it was a head fake. I mean, if you take kids out of the classroom where they're already preconceived to thinking they're going to be learning in a certain way, I think they'll have a lot of fun learning about physics and math in an unexpected way. And once they get that head fake, it's easier then to sit down and do the calculations and the reasoning behind that. And it's not just in sports. It's, you, Regina, talked about musical instruments, string instruments. I think when I was in college is when I understood more about the cello and piano lessons I'd taken in grade school when we were learning about frequency and wavelength and vibrations. And this can be applied to all aspects of whether it's cooking, if you have a student who's interested in culinary arts, using chemistry to explain that science aspect of cooking would help them understand that. And at the end of the day, even if you don't capture all of those students to pursue STEM, you've made them more science literate. And I think that's a crucial part of the conversation, because then there's an appreciation for STEM, and just having science literacy is very, very important. So that's what I would do for a day, because it'd be fun for me too.
Great. Okay, I'd like to open that question to the panel also. If you were queen or king for the day, what would you do to increase the participation of women in STEM?
Okay, Sabrina really answered the question, and I am queen for a day. Regina is Latin for queen, so I am queen. But I think the thread she pulled on was exactly what I was speaking of earlier, is finding the relevance to whatever it is. I think there is a huge stigma around STEM, and I don't know where it was born out of. I know when my third niece was born, Caitlin, and she's the first child of my youngest sister, and she was about 2, and I said, "Do you know what your aunt does for a living? Because I'm a STEM proponent." She says, "Yes," and she said, "You're a doctor," and I knew she thought I was a medical doctor. I said, "Not that kind of doctor, but close enough." And I said, "Well, what do you want to be?" And she said, "The lunch lady." I nearly fell out of my chair. I was like, "Oh, Lord, we have a lot of," she said she wanted to be the lunch lady. And I looked at my sister and I said, "You got to help me with this." And so I said, "No, you don't want to be the lunch lady." And she started crying. "What's wrong with the lunch?" I said, "Oh, Jesus, help me." And because I didn't want to send that message, I wanted her to say a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. And so I had to work at working that conversation with her around how important it is for the lunch lady's career, number one, and how that could arrive at something even greater. Today she's 14, she wants to be an attorney, so I got some progress on that. But again, we're going back to relevance, and I truly believe with all of me that there are a few things that we can talk about, be it all of this reality madness that's going on, all of the sports craze that we are embroiled with, all of the social media that is taken off. At the end of the day, I think all roads do lead to some type of STEM discipline. And so I think we need to take the stigma out of it, because there is a stigma. It's hard, and it's for anal people, and it's, all of that. And so if we remove the stigma and put it in a friendlier environment, I think it would be much more embraced and pursued, quite frankly, at much greater levels than what we're seeing.
I also think that if I was queen for the day, that I would want all children, but also young girls, to be exposed to the fact that STEM fields are fun, exciting, but they're not a male-dominated field. Regina, you talked earlier about the fact that culturally and just even worldwide, traditionally, we have seen a lot of these fields as male fields. Even growing up, maybe some of us saw those as male fields, even though we decided to pursue them. And that if we can expose kids to, as what Janelle said earlier, as that is an option for them, that is something that then they will carry through their education. Because a lot of these young females might not see it as an option for them, for their future, and then by the time they do get to that middle school age and then passed into the college age, they're not putting that on the table. So I think that making it relevant, as you guys talked about, but also exposing as much as we can children when they're young to these roles, because maybe they don't have those influences in their lives, just like I wasn't ever exposed to those, that when you realize they're an option, then it's something that you can consider for your future, and that we can help promote children of all types to be able to pursue STEM fields.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, just about making it fun. And I think we try, and I think we achieve that with some students, but, overcoming this idea that science is geeky, like that girl's t-shirt, I would say, speaking on behalf of the panel, I think we represent a bunch of cool people, as well as all the people that are here today, so thank you. If I do say so myself on behalf of all of us. But, making it fun, and really, with my background in the arts, the fact that I became an engineer, it's really interesting when I look back on my first year at Auburn University. I was tackling my engineering classes, and of course, those were the classes that were there to really figure out who was going to stick it and who was going to say, this is not for me. And fair is fair, we need classes like that. But at the end of my first year in engineering, I was tired. I was exhausted. I had met some challenges. I had definitely pushed past some barriers with myself and with my peers. But I realized that there was something very important missing as a part of who I was. And I realized that I was spending so much time focusing on trying to learn all my science and engineering and get through that first year of college that I wasn't taking into account a very key aspect of who I was, which was that artist, the dancer. So I started looking at opportunities to hone not only the skills of my engineering brain, but also keeping in mind that a large part of who I am is this artist, this dancer, this musician, this not-so-great singer. So, and I auditioned for the Auburn Tiger Paws, the dance team, and I got in on that. So by day I was that geeky girl in engineering. By night, I was cheering on our basketball teams and football teams. And then I started revisiting Spanish and learning that foreign language that I had started studying because I had to in high school, but realized I really missed learning about a different culture and learning a foreign language. And all of a sudden, the key aspects of engineering and science started filtering into the arts, and the arts started filtering into the engineering, and then I got a co-op program. I was a co-op student here at NASA, and all of a sudden I had this opportunity to take everything at school, all the boring humdrum stuff, and apply it to real-world applications, and it became fun. And I think that's really key, looking back on what really kept me motivated and going wasn't necessarily doing all the math derivations in calculus, even though secretly I loved it, so I couldn't help it. But, you know, making it fun and then making it relevant and making it realistic to the parabolic flight of a basketball as it's going into the hoop, or a soccer ball, or a dancer's movements, musical instruments. There's so much crossover, and so making it fun, making it interesting, making it relevant, but then also teaching students that STEM is cool, it's fun, there's very cool things associated with it, but you can also do STEM and be a photographer, be a dancer, be a fitness enthusiast. So, you know, really understanding that crossover.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. I know this isn't a question I'm supposed to answer because I'm the moderator, but I have to throw in my 2 cents. And if I were able to be queen for a day, the only thing that I would add to all of the wonderful things that you've shared is an opportunity to have forums like this where we get community involved and we get families involved, because they're such a critical part of a student support system from grade level up to secondary education, all the way through university level. So that would be the thing that I add. So now it's time for us to open up to the audience for questions. And I just want to give you some friendly reminders about if you are planning to come ask a question. First, we ask that you stand at the stationary microphones, which are located at the front of the stage on both sides. And if you have a question, please be sure to wait for the microphone to ask your question so that we can capture all questions, and we'll be able to capture your response so that when we have the audible playback of the tape, that folks will be able to recognize what was asked in the question. So at this time, we're accepting questions, and while I'm waiting for individuals who have questions to come to the front, I'm going to take a question that we have from Twitter. And the person who has the question is at Harkus4U, and this is the question for the panel. How do you change the mindset that I am not good at math or science, or even convince girls that science is cool?
I think a little bit about what we talked about earlier, about making it fun, taking it out of the classroom, and especially, I mean, from my personal experience, science was an area where I was able to see math in action, where I was able to see how math was really applied to real-world situations. And when you're able to do that, I think it helps understand the concepts of math, and instead of feeling frustrated and giving up on those concepts, being able to, as we said before, when Sabrina talked about going out and playing with these kids and then going back to the classroom, that these concepts and these ideas behind what we're learning in math and science become understandable, and we see the real-world application of them.
I think for someone to write off saying, I'm not good at math in totality is maybe dissecting the problem down into smaller steps. So I would encourage, I didn't excel at all my engineering courses throughout my bachelor's and master's. There were definitely, I'm better at the physical sciences than I was in the thermo and heat transfer. But for me to have said, I'm going to check out a mechanical engineering would have been very short-sighted. So if a student feels that they're not good at math, well, what is it about that math problem or that word problem or geometry or calculus? Like, let's try and figure out this specific area and work on it, because your whole life you're going to be encountered in some capacity of your job or in your personal life where something's going to be difficult, and you just have to work through it. So, and talk to people. I mean, I think especially girls, the question came about girls. Girls and women talk. I mean, that's what comes naturally. So find someone and talk about it and ask the questions. I think I heard once that women say 15 or 25 words for every word that a gentleman says. So women have that capacity to talk. So talk it out, and you will find the answer and get better at math. Mm-hmm.
I have to agree a lot with Sabrina on that one, because I do see students that will say, well, I'm just not good at this. And instead of asking those questions, they've already checked themselves as not being competent in that field. And when you go and look for help, a lot of times it helps you break down those difficult problems that you don't understand, and really then gives you the capability of understanding it when you're working as a team and working with others, and then helps you tackle that problem not as an individual but sometimes as a team. That gives you the confidence to then do things as an individual later.
Excellent. Okay, I think we're ready for our first question.
Good morning, panel. I really appreciate all the insights you've brought this morning, but I was going to change one of the questions that's already been asked and say, if you were a university administrator, like a dean of engineering, how would you implement changes in the engineering curriculum for those other women who are in the engineering curriculum today?
Since I work with universities, I feel I must answer this. Thank you for asking that question. That's a very insightful and good question. I've been working with universities for quite a while, for a long time, and I was a former faculty member myself. And one of the changes I'm seeing across the nation in universities, especially in colleges of engineering, is at two levels. One is there are more and more female or women engineering deans across the country. Texas A&M University just recently hired Dr. Catherine Banks as the Dean of Engineering. Purdue University has a Dean of Engineering that's female. Rensselaer Polytechnic has a Dean of Engineering that's female. I can give you a lot of examples, but anyway, so that's one change at leadership level. So they're very sensitive and they know what are the obstacles in some cases. The second thing I'm seeing is there are more and more available PhDs who can teach at university in engineering departments, so that there is a role model in the classroom for engineering students who are females to be able to talk to, feel comfortable in discussing. And of course, in addition to that, there is, I think, now a number of opportunities where there are a lot of specialized programs for them to participate and get both financial and other support as well. For some years, I believe Susan knows this, at Texas A&M we funded a program on how to retain underrepresented and minority and women students first 2 years of engineering. So there are opportunities, and I think the good news is things are changing. It's not necessarily going to happen overnight, but there are good. So in engineering, university administrators are very sensitive to this and trying to work those changes in.
So Cam, I do appreciate your perspective, but having a daughter in mechanical engineering at the University of Houston today, I'm really interested in hearing what the young women who are recently graduated from an engineering program, what their perspective would be.
I know for when I was in school, and I was studying mechanical engineering, we had a sophomore level and a senior level design project. And I wish we'd had those every year of my studies, because I gained more from those. It was a one semester design competition for each of those years than, I'm not going to say that I learned in my academics, but I got a bigger bang for my buck of what I was learning. So I would love to see more of the group projects and design competitions throughout my education career.
One of the things early in my educational career and at the college level was the very first job I took is immediately when I started my education, instead of focusing solely on my classes, I also got involved in professional organizations where there was a support group of other students who were encouraging each other to stick to their technical degrees, to work through the difficult classes. And I also got involved in outreach programs. I was the outreach coordinator for our engineering organization to go out to middle schools and high schools and talk about science and engineering. Here I was barely starting my education in engineering, but something that it did is it gave me an immense enthusiasm and excitement for what I was doing. And so it helped me maybe go out to my community and motivate other people. And I lived in a community that is almost 80% minorities, and to feel that I was helping motivate others to be exposed to fields that maybe they'd never been exposed to, then gave me that much more perseverance to stick to what I had started.
Okay, let me make sure I'm answering what I think you're asking before I say something. And I think the question was if either of us were in an administrator or director type of position on staff at a university, how would we influence or change the engineering curriculum to draw in more students? Did I get that correctly? Okay. So just thinking about that and listening to the answers, and perhaps what I would think about, and I thought about it in the context, Mike, my director may appreciate my answer, in the context of what I have the opportunity to do in my job, and I have the pleasure of integrating some of the products and services, or all of the products and services, quite frankly, that come out of external relations that touch stations. And one of the things that we go back and forth with, particularly on the communication side of the house, is how to get the story told on a layperson's term. We work with our chief scientist in the program, and of course they have all the technical data, and they know all of the how to describe the research that's coming down from station from a technical perspective. And of course, you know, I have a doctorate, and I know how PhDs feels about their work, and they want it written in an academic way such that it is representative of their academic achievement and their educational level. And then on the ERO side of the house, it's like, that's all great, but I need to tell your vaccine story to the third grader, and I can't tell them about Nucaka Stramonal or some 18-syllable word that won't be relatable, less known, translatable. So we have that conundrum kind of going on at NASA. So if I had the opportunity to influence a curriculum, the first thing that I would do is, and I guess maybe my job is at Mediators, is try to look for a way to sanitize that content into ways that are digestible. And sometimes you have to do that a little on the fly, if you will. And the example that I use with people when I talk about, you know, we really should in America start very early, and I think we do start early with, say, for instance, mathematics for students. And I said, you know, we really do start at maybe second grade level teaching algebra. We don't call it algebra. We give a student a problem and we say box plus 3 equals 5, fill in the box. And when you get to algebra, they exchange the box for X, and they tell you to solve for X. But fundamentally, it's the same thing. And when you say box plus 3 equals 5, I don't think there's one soul that would hesitate to solve that equation. And I'm simplifying it, certainly. But when you say X plus 3 equals 5, or isolate X, or solve for the variable, and you start describing things in a very, I'm going to use the word convoluted way, then that's when you start losing people. So if I had the opportunity to change a curriculum, I would call it Dancing with the Stars. I don't know. Don't call it thermodynamics necessarily. Call it something that's more digestible, and change or alter the content, not such that you get a different type of learning, but you have a different experience in learning the same thing. So that's, if I had the opportunity to do that, that's what I would do.
Thank you, Regina. We are at the point now where we actually have exhausted the time that we set aside for our question and answer session. There is one person that was asking a question. I'd like you to still go ahead and ask your question, but just a note to the panelists, if you could be very brief with your response, because I want to make sure that the person has a chance to ask, and then we'll be able to close out. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jessica Gray. I have a question. I wanted to know how you guys overcome the negativity that comes with being a female in the STEM major. A lot of times I see people saying like career woman, or she's career driven, and a lot of times that has a negative connotation. So how do we flip that into something positive?
The short answer is ignore it. Seriously, you're going to get that whether you're a woman or not, quite frankly, when you get into your professional environment. It's going to always be something, and my mantra is you have to become the change you want to see, and you have to ignore it and not give it. When you don't give it energy and give it credence, then it will mean nothing to you.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. You know, if someone tells you something, that's their opinion and their opinion only. It's up to you to internalize it how you would like. So if you accept that they say, well, you're a career woman, and you hear that and that goes into your brain and you think negative, that's you consciously making that decision. But if you hear, well, you're a career woman, and in your brain you go, I am. That's right, and a darn good one too. Well, see, now you flipped it. So it's really, and it's hard to do. You know, there are days when I've met negativity and I've had to think to myself, think positive, and some days I'm like, oh, I'm a career woman, you know, and I let it get in there. But it's really up to you to force it, to make it a positive situation. And sometimes the best way to do that is to take it on as a challenge and say, you know what? Heck yeah, I'm a career woman, and I'm a sister, and I'm a mother, and I'm a dancer, and I'm an artist, and I'm a photographer. Let me tell you just what kind of a career woman I am. And just turn it around. You have the capability to do it. You're absolutely going to encounter that your entire life, not just for a career woman, for all different aspects. And we consciously make the choice to allow that in, or to ignore it, or to challenge it.
And I was going to mention earlier in one of my answers, I talked about the fact that it was so important to have the confidence to define who you are as an engineer, a scientist, or a career woman. And as each one of us define that role for ourselves, we're setting that role model for one person at a time for all of those out in our community, and we're going to slowly change that stigma from a negative to a positive. And so, like Regina said, we need to each be the change we want to see in the community around us.
Thank you so much. Panelists, are there any closing remarks that you'd like to add, or anything that you'd like to say that you haven't had an opportunity to say at this point?
I'd just like to say thank you. I'd like to commend you, Janelle. You did a wonderful job moderating. You all don't know this, but Janelle was not the moderator. I went on leave, and so they made quite a few changes, so she stepped up to the plate very beautifully. It's almost like it was a natural. I thank the audience for coming to hear our thoughts, and perhaps, hopefully something was said that you, number one, can relate to, but more importantly, Mike, I'm actioning them. See, you're my mentor, that you go out and you share something that was said to encourage some young woman or young person, or male as well, to number one, join the STEM profession. If nothing else, Sabrina said, become science literate, or just to become more educated. So thank everybody for their time today to come hear us.
Okay, thank you. If I could sum up everything. If I could sum up this experience in one word, it would just be wow. So thank you, Regina, and thank you, panelists. I think that the conversations that we had today were awesome. When I think about things that are going on in our world, there's still so many famous firsts for women. And so I hope that if a young woman or young girl is watching this presentation afterwards, that they think about that as well. So there's a lot of opportunities there for you also. And I think as far as us as the panel, the more discussions that we have like the one that we just had, the closer we're going to get to preparing young ladies to pursue STEM careers and excel also. So by us doing the things that we're doing, we're just furthering our national competitiveness, and it's helping us to have a strong presence that is important for us in key fields, especially if we as a nation want to continue to advance technologically in the way that we've been advancing. So as we wrap up the panel, I would like to just have a few housekeeping items, if you would, and I'd like to leave you with some important websites that you'll have access to so that you can be able to use some of the resources that we've talked about earlier. And the first one is we still can accept Twitter questions, so feel free to tweet. And that address again is www.twitter.com/NASA Johnson. And also, we want to make sure you have information to the Office of Equal Opportunity and Diversity if there's an occasion where you'd like to have a copy or have access to the playback of the video that is from today. And our phone number is 281-483-0607. And also, we want to make sure that you have information about the Society of Women Engineers, Texas Space Center section. And the website you'll see is listed on the screen, but it is www.tstce.org. www.swe.org, and it's /SWE/Regency/sections-C008. And so I'll give you an email address to make that even easier for you. And that is T as in Tom, S as in son, C as in candy, webmaster at SWE.org. So I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to moderate this informative and this very insightful panel. I've had a delightful time. And with that being said, I'd like to now introduce to you Ms. Deborah Bansky. She's the director of JSC's Office of Equal Opportunity and Diversity, and she's going to provide our closing remarks. Thank you.
Well, so much has been said today, and that was what I was going to say is wow. Please give Janelle and our panel members another round of applause. Thank you for all you said to encourage students, and today we've learned so many personal stories about how you were captivated by science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I don't think people realize how much influence they can have on a young woman's life as a mentor and a counselor. I was thinking today how when I was in high school in 1976, I had won a contest in math and went to enroll in my calculus class, and my counselor said to me, "Why are you doing that? You finished your math." And I said, "Well, it's the next math in the section." And they said, "Well, you finished math. Why don't you just do something fun like tennis?" So today I can't do math or tennis well. But I wish that person would have had to have seen a panel like this, so maybe some of the things that we can do is challenge all of you to pass on this information to a teacher or a counselor, a parent that you know that's struggling with whether or not STEM is the right field for their child. Next, what we'd like to do is just, again, to thank these women with some certificates and to maybe have a photo op. So I'd like to go ahead and call out your names. First, Janelle Holt. Thanks for stepping up.
Thank you.
Regina Blue. Irene Chan. Cam Lula, Dr. Cam Lula. Heather Paul. Alma Stephanie Tapia. And Sabrina Singh Gilmore. So we're going to have a chance for a photo op. If anybody wants to stay, I know this was a program that was inspiring, but some of you have to get back to other things, and so we'll understand. But if you want to, again, join us for a photo op with the panel. Yes, did you have
Deborah,
something?
I just want to personally thank TQ Bui. She did a wonderful job. Yeah.
TQ, come on up.
She's the one who invited me, so I appreciate this opportunity to be with such a wonderful panel.
TQ, come up. We're going to have a photo op. She's our Federal Women's Program Manager, sitting next to Sherry Hatcher, who was our Women's Program Manager last year. We have a small office, but we try hard, and we thank you all for coming. Like I said, I challenge you to share this message with somebody today. Program's ended. Susan, would you come up for a photo op too? Oh, here you want.